On this episode of AvTalk, we get ready for a busy week of travel, and the final report on Air India Express Flight 1344 leaves us incredulous. Plus, there's a new freighter in town. Hello, and welcome to episode 129 of AvTalk. I am Ian Petchnick, here as always with
Jason Rabinowitz. Hello, Ian. That was a nice ramp up you had today. I feel like it was a little longer than usual.
Yeah, I want to see how long I can draw it out. Like, can we go to like 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30,
I want you to yodel it next time.
I mean, I've been known to never yodel, but I will do my very best to learn how to do that and begin some type of yodeling class in order to, by next week, have that accomplished just for you, Jason.
Fantastic. That's what people will get in lieu of me being on that episode.
If any of our listeners teach a yodeling class, please email us at podcast@fr24.com. But how are you? How are you doing, sir?
Status unchanged from last week.
Excellent. I think. I can't remember how you were last week, but you sound
it doesn't
well.
matter. It doesn't matter.
You sound well. I'm getting excited for this weekend. We're both off to LA this weekend. You are headed there tomorrow.
That's right.
Thursday. I leave Friday afternoon now, having changed my flight, I think 612 times.
Yeah, thankfully, none of my flights changed substantially. I think my flight to LA actually got shorter by 10 minutes somehow. I'm not sure how that works. But United was very worried about that and offered to let me change or cancel my flight for no fee because, getting in 10 minutes earlier than expected is real bad news.
My original flight had a similar issue, but it was 5 minutes later. And so they were going to allow me to change my flight as well. It was getting in 5 minutes. I didn't even leave at a different time. It just got in 5 minutes. The magic of schedule padding.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But yeah, my flights are all over the place and have changed very much because instead of just going for a quick weekend to LA and back, I am now headed to LA for the weekend for Dorkfest, and I hope to see many of you. And then next week, leaving Sunday directly from LA, I'm headed over to Airbus Summit in Toulouse. And I'm really looking forward to being over there and spending a couple days with folks who are working on kind of the future of aviation, at least as far as Airbus sees it, and how electric propulsion systems are going to play a role, especially in regional and kind of urban mobility. And then what is hydrogen going to be? Airbus has kind of decided that is their push. Hydrogen is going to be their kind of long-haul propulsion system. So it's going to be interesting to hear in depth from folks who are working on that. But there's also a lot of other things going on, talking about sustainable aviation fuel, which is very hot right now, but no one really knows how it's all going to work. So I'm looking forward to learning a lot about what is actually going to happen as far as sustainable aviation fuel is concerned, what's actually possible, and not just we're going to do X by Y date and everyone goes, okay, that sounds great, and then it never happens. So this event will hopefully lead to a lot more concrete answers about some of the thornier questions as far as the future of aviation and can it truly be made sustainable. So that'll be a very interesting few days in Toulouse. I'm really looking forward to that.
That's great. You're off to hear about hopefully what is the future of aviation, and I will check out a 20-something-year-old 767 and report on the history of aviation by sitting in one for 5 hours.
I mean, that's important. I mean, I will also be doing some historical aviating, I guess, with the 757-300 that I'm going to be sitting in the third to last row on Friday.
Oh, you beat me. I'm in the fourth to last row of this 76 currently.
Yes, but by design.
Which is somehow, the first row of regular economy. So, okay.
It's amazing. But yeah, so looking forward to that. I will be there as well as our colleague Gabriel. We'll be there. He's going to be shooting a lot of video. We'll do a special episode of the podcast. Hopefully, we'll have some really good interviews throughout the week. And then Thursday, we're going to do something special in Toulouse. So I'm really looking forward to that as well. So that'll be kind of a a second look at things. So that'll be a bit more interesting than just the sustainable aviation stuff. So I'm really looking forward to that. And it should be a very busy week for the first time in, well, I don't know,
2
18,
years?
19 months. Yeah, really 2 years.
In Toulouse, don't forget to say hello to our favorite eatery establishment. I'm very jealous that you might have the chance to go, and I hope you're still open.
I will report back.
Please
as
do.
Crazy as things have been. So we've got that coming up. That's kind of all of the future stuff. Let us get to what has happened this week. First things first, we've got a PBS Frontline co-produced with the New York Times 737 MAX documentary. Still working my way through it because such is life. But it's a real interesting look so far at what led to the 737 MAX, and then how the forces that led to the 737 MAX, as opposed to a clean sheet narrow-body aircraft by Boeing, expressed themselves in all of these push, pull, stretch, smush pressures, both engineering-wise and business-wise, that led to the two crashes and Boeing's response to that. So it's very interesting so far. It's kind of, looking at it in hindsight, of course, this was a possibility. Everything that we've learned over the past 2.5, 3 years, of course, this was a possibility. And the documentary really gets into that. So far, so good. So I give it a go check it out, but I can't really give it a review quite yet.
And I have not had the chance to watch it yet, so I'm going to have to take Ian's recommendation here. I'll get to it at some point. Haven't had
there
the chance
you go. You can watch it on your flight to Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah. No.
Maybe not.
I used to watch a lot of air crash investigation on JetBlue flights because that was, for some reason, the only thing that was on basic cable whenever I flew.
That's right. Yeah, that was always an option, it seemed like. Speaking of air crash investigation, the accident report, the final report for the Air India Express flight that suffered a runway overrun in India, landing in Kozhikode from Dubai. This was Air India Express flight 1344. That final report came out, was issued. The report's dated at the end of last month, but the publication was just earlier this week, and it details. I mean, like every incident we talk about, there's the Swiss cheese model where the holes have to line up just right so that things go wrong. And this was just one thing after another. The report details the very poor landing weather conditions, thunderstorms, heavy rain, high winds, crosswinds, tailwinds, just not great at all.
Everything bad that you'd find in a textbook about how not to land was present, it seemed like.
Exactly. The windshield wiper broke on the captain's side, and the captain was the pilot flying. So that takes away a slight visual component there. They made their first approach. Then they did a go around on the first approach, and then they wanted to come back, and instead of landing on runway 28, they switched to runway 10. That ended up having a tailwind component of slightly more than 14 knots, crosswind component of 6 knots. The speed began increasing on this second and fateful approach. Then the aircraft passed the runway threshold, and the numbers beyond the runway threshold kept increasing as the first officer became more concerned. 2,500 feet beyond the threshold, and the runway touchdown zone is 3,000 feet from the threshold, from the beginning of the threshold. So they're nearing the end. Just a few seconds before the aircraft touches down, 5 seconds before the aircraft touches down, they lower the nose, and the thrust is finally reduced. 3 seconds before touchdown, the pilot monitoring, so this is the first officer, and I'll quote the report directly here, again tried to catch the attention of the pilot flying by giving a feeble, uncomfortable call. Captain? When the aircraft had crossed the end of the touchdown zone, 3,600 feet beyond the threshold,
Jeez.
During this time, the engine thrust finally went down to idle. The aircraft crossed 4,200 feet beyond the threshold. And then the first officer gave a go-around call. The captain ignored it. So there was no response whatsoever. The cockpit voice recorder records no response whatsoever. During the landing flare, aircraft floats. They're already beyond the touchdown zone. It increases the landing. The aircraft touched down at 4,438 feet on the 8,858-foot long runway. So it was raining hard. It was wet at the time of the runway. They landed more than half the way down the runway.
With a tailwind and a crosswind. And a broken windshield wiper.
And a broken windshield wiper after the first officer had suggested feebly and uncomfortably, and then called more forcefully, I guess is what the report is indicating, for a go-around. Didn't happen. They landed. And then they went off the end of the runway.
Yeah, a lot going on there. And unfortunately, I believe it was, what's the official number, that 20 people died plus the two pilots? Or was it 20? I think it was actually 20, including the two pilots. What I'm reading says at least 20 people. I'm not sure why it would be worded like that a year later, but a lot went wrong here. A breakdown in basic flying, CRM. Certainly the first officer here did not assert any really meaningful attempt to get the captain's attention or take control of the aircraft and stop that very poor landing from happening. And then I'm reading from Flight Global that somehow, against seemingly all logic, the rescue crews at this particular airport were not familiar with the 737-800. And after the overrun, which was pretty dramatic since this runway is on kind of an embankment or like a plateau on the top of a hill, and it ran down the top of that hill, but they weren't able to extract the pilots from the wreckage for an hour because somehow they weren't familiar with the 737, which just is absolutely baffling. So everything went wrong in the air and on the ground. Like, how the hell is that possible?
I do not. So what's really interesting here, and I forgot to mention this in the setup to the approach, is that air traffic control was so concerned about the weather that they issued a weather warning, which basically says, I mean, it's really bad here. It's so bad. The ARF trucks were already stationed at critical points along the runway in anticipation of a possible runway overrun.
Huh. That it's not great, especially seeing the topography of that runway, where a runway overrun almost certainly means catastrophic damage and loss of life. Wow.
Yeah, and so it not to put too fine a point on it, but it gets worse. After the aircraft landed, so after there's weight on wheels, the thrust reversers were deployed. Before they could become operational, they were stowed. And the captain let off the brakes a little bit. Then they were deployed for a second time, 15 seconds after they touched down. When the aircraft was near the end of the runway.
Huh.
They had airspeed of 60 knots at the end of the runway, beyond at the end of the paved portion of the runway area.
If you're writing a textbook and want to cite an example where literally everything goes wrong, I can't think of a better example.
They went off. So I mean, it's a plateaued runway, but the embankment, it's not a gradual slope.
No, it is quite dramatic.
The aircraft came to rest 110 feet below the runway elevation and had impacted the perimeter road at a ground speed of 42 knots.
I have nothing to add to that. It's just everything that could have gone wrong went wrong here.
21 fatalities, including both pilots. So the 2 pilots and 19 passengers were killed. 76 people were injured, including one of the flight attendants, had serious injuries. 34 people, including one crew member, had minor injuries. And miraculously, I mean, we'll put a link to the report in the show notes because it includes photos and all of the figures and things from the flight. But miraculously, 59 people had no injuries whatsoever.
That's crazy. Lucky.
Yeah, as if the runway overrun wasn't bad enough. Then the aircraft goes 110 feet down a steep embankment. And breaks into 3 parts. And somehow it's just everything that could have gone wrong did. And I've been through the report a couple times just because I wanted to make sure that what I was reading was in fact, the sequence of events. And I just get to the point where I'm like, okay, at what point were we not considering maybe we should fly somewhere else? Maybe we should land somewhere else. Maybe we should try this again later.
Yeah, if the airport is rolling emergency vehicles in preparation of your what should be totally normal landing, you probably shouldn't be landing there, is my guess.
That would be my indication. Like, if, again, I'm not neither Jason nor I are commercially rated pilots. That's not who we are.
But that's just common sense. Like, if you're doing something risky,
I feel like we can extrapolate on this, and certainly there are human factors that influence people's decision making in a situation, and we are not in that situation, and therefore, there are other factors. However, generally speaking, like Jason said before, if you're going to write a textbook about what not to do in certain situations, I feel like this ranks high in textbookness.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel bad for the staff at the airport, of the air traffic controllers, that they obviously had a feeling that something bad was going to be happening. They rolled the equipment in anticipation of something bad happening, and lo and behold, it happened. So that's not a good omen.
Not for this episode, but for a future episode, I want to talk to someone who designs or engineers airports, because I have questions about these tabletop runways. Because we've seen this here in India, we've seen it in Turkey a few times, where these tabletop runways, and there's the airport in South America or Central America. Is it Honduras?
I think so. Is that where the American 75 had that incident?
Yeah, I think so. And somebody feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, or add to the list if you can think of another example where these tabletop runways do not lead to good results when there is an incident. Almost by design, it will end worse than if it wasn't a tabletop runway. So yeah. Why are these airports constructed in the first place? I mean, there's got to be a good reason to do it.
Yeah, and I'm going off memory here from over a year ago at this point, but I know that they had actually restricted wide-body aircraft from operating in and out of this airport because of the tabletop nature of this runway, and that it just wasn't long enough, and that they had planned to build a runway safety area or extend what was already there, and it didn't happen. Reading Wikipedia, so grain of salt here, but as per November 2020, the airport does not have the recommended runway safety area or any EMAS at the end of the runway, which is not great considering the danger of an overrun as proven here. It seems like the least they could do is put some EMAS there. And who knows, it may have prevented any loss of life in this case. And yeah, it's kind of unbelievable that a tabletop runway isn't required to have EMAS, no matter how long the runway might be.
You would think that would be one of the things where how could we, if we're going to build the runway like this, how could we make the airport safer? And as it turns out, we can put in an EMAS, and that would increase the level of safety, if just a little bit. EMAS, for those, I guess, new to the podcast or listening and not holding your aviation acronym dictionaries with you at this time. Engineered materials arresting system. It's basically puffy concrete.
The crunchy stuff at the end of the runway.
It's the crunchy stuff at the end of the runway. It's a crushable concrete that can bear, I think, I forget, you can drive a car on it basically, but an airplane, which is much heavier, sinks into it, and then it looks like you've driven through a cake or something like a.
It's kind of like a runaway truck ramp on a highway.
Similar, yeah, same idea with a fun engineered concrete material. But we'll leave this discussion here, and if anyone has any thoughts on this particular incident after reading the report, please absolutely do email us at podcast@for24.com, because I think this is a really good report to read and see kind of A to B to C, very clear, the whole way through. Jason, let's stay in India, but this time go with some what we'll call good news, and it looks like with all things going in the right direction, Jet Airways may make a return next year.
And you know how I know it's happening for real, Ian?
Go on.
They followed me on Twitter, so that's how I know they're really coming back.
Of course.
Out of nowhere, earlier this week, followed by Jet Airways. So, that tells me they mean business.
I've got nothing to provide a counterpoint to that.
What will be in their fleet, or where they will be flying, or when they'll be doing that, but I'm taking it for real now.
Great. So keeping an eye on that one, and we'll see how things go. Maybe we'll be flying a Jet Airways flight next year.
Sure.
Who knows?
Sure. Looks like they have a couple of 777s left in their fleet, which is nice. 6. So, okay. Great.
We'll take what we can get. So let's talk about Alitalia.
Aye.
Because things are getting interesting. We're a month out. Today's September 15th.
Oh, 1 month from Doomsday for Alitalia.
One month from the end of Alitalia. And earlier this week, or late last week, the European Competition Tribunal said that Italy can invest $1.5 billion, I think it's 1.4 billion euros, into ITA, which is the other company that is not Alitalia in any way, shape, or form, but could be if they bid for Alitalia, but we'll get there in just a second. Because they ruled that the new company is in fact new and is not liable for the illegal state aid that the Europeans competition ruled illegal, the 900 million euros that the state of Italy gave to Alitalia to try and keep them afloat, which they said, no, you can't do that. But they don't have to repay it because they're in fact a new company somehow.
Oh, so it's a new company using the same employees, the same airports, the same aircraft, the same destinations. So yeah, that seems new to me.
Yeah, so 2017.
And the same name.
No, but not maybe. We don't know that for sure.
Sure.
I'm getting to that part. European Commission says that the state loans that Alitalia illegally received constitutes illegal state aid, but ITA is not the economic successor to Alitalia. So they don't have to pay that back, which means that ITA can take $1.5 billion over the next 3 years from the Italian government. Because it's an investment and not a loan. I don't understand.
Alitalia loves investments. Just ask Etihad.
Yeah. I don't really understand the this seems like one of those things where
you're not supposed to understand it because it doesn't make sense.
We're working back. So the commission's ruling that this is not an economic successor was actually very interesting. It's not an economic successor because it will have fewer flights, fewer destinations, And they're actually, this was one of the reasonings, and I love this one. They're actually going to try and make money. And that was one of the reasons
in this industry.
That was one of the reasons that it's not an economic successor to Alitalia, is that this ITA is actually going to try and make money.
Okay, I mean that's a great reason to run a business is to make money. That's generally the goal. But when was the last time Alitalia did that?
But that's the point. I think is that ITA is actually going to try and make money, versus Alitalia, which may or may not have been trying. I think that was the clarification, which I thought was just wonderful.
Yeah, good luck.
The other thing that they mentioned, and this is an interesting one to me, is that ITA is not going to be allowed to bid for is not going to be allowed to take over the non-aviation businesses from Alitalia. Those are going to be sold off in competitive tenders. However, if they competitively tender them, then it could all come back to them eventually. There's also the fact that they won't be able to get the loyalty program, which I think is one of the big factors here.
Yeah, those are apparently quite valuable, since pretty much every major U.S. airline leveraged that during COVID to basically get a huge check.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take a huge check as well if anyone wants to send one to me as well. So yeah, this is going to be a really interesting one to see. The big thing, like Jason mentioned, the big thing is going to be what is the tender for the brand, and how quickly does ITA take that over?
Do we know what the bidding has been like for the Alitalia brand name at this point? Do we know if anyone else has actually bid on it?
I don't know if anyone else has bid on it. I don't even know if the bidding is out, because I don't think that's been opened for bidding yet. ITA has already said it's going to bid for that, and I would assume that being a Chicagoan, I know that you can have an open and transparent bid and have only one available vendor, depending on how you structure the bid. So I have a feeling that might be how things work out.
If it's not like that,
company might be ITA.
I would like to bid on it. We could rename this the Alitalia podcast, and no one can stop us.
I know that's absolutely true. We could do that, and I would certainly bid upwards of €1.
I'm in for €2. I probably have some somewhere. Some coins
I've got some. I should probably dig those out for next week. But so we'll call it €5 and see where we go from there.
Okay,
Jason, shall we take a quick break and then come back and talk about some new paint and some new planes?
Yep.
Yeah. All right.
Yep.
Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. It is time for one of my favorite segments called Ooh, That's Pretty.
Ooh, what's pretty today?
A couple things with wings. We've got some special liveries, some aircraft. We'll start with my least favorite, which is the sustainability themed livery from British Airways. Golf Tango Tango November Alpha. An A320 painted in what is charitably be described as blue.
Because greenwashing comes in blue now.
It's technically called their Better World livery, and it's I guess just it's uninspired. I mean, if you're gonna go for it. Like really, kind of lean into it. But it's just kind of muted. It's muted. It's muted. It's uninspired. They could have done a better job. Go back and do it again. And
just bring back the doves.
There you go. Problem solved. In more exciting livery news, Saudia is celebrating its 75th anniversary, and as such, they have painted two special liveries. They've got a 787, which is HZARE in a 75th livery, which looks nice, but
this is a big but.
But they have, or actually, it's more of an and. They've got HZAK28 in a retro livery, which just, it looks real sharp.
Yeah, the 7810 has an interesting tail. I'll say that. I'm not going to speak which way or the other about who they put on the tail, so I'm just going to ignore that aircraft entirely and just only look at the 777, which looks freaking phenomenal. I think it's the 1973 era livery with the green and blue cheat line and the green tail with a golden 75 icon up front. It is fantastic looking, and they should make all of their airplanes look like that.
Yeah, it looks very nice. It's got that just highlighter green on the cheat line is just very, very good looking.
I mean, does it look like that in reality, or did they crank the saturation up on this photo? I hope it actually looks like that.
I mean, I'm looking at the photo on Jet Photos, and it's a night shot, and you can tell it's that bright.
Oh wow, yeah, that's.
So.
I hope to see that at JFK. I'm sure it pops in. I recognize that registration number, so I'm sure I'll see it at some point. But it's a looker.
So go check those out. We'll put links in the show notes to the tracking, and they should be back in service shortly. The good news as far as traffic is concerned, flight traffic globally, is that things after kind of a weird August lull when the Delta variant kind of threw everybody for a loop, things are slightly recovering now that the new restrictions are in place, new testing protocols, new this, new that. We're taking a step backward as far as COVID restrictions are concerned, or we're taking a step in a different direction depending on which airline or country you're talking about. But China had just an awful August. Flights were down 38% from July, and passenger traffic was down 63%.
Yikes.
And the traffic numbers, the passenger traffic numbers, according to the Civil Aviation Agency of China, and just some really, really dismal numbers. That said, looking at the graph as far as the flight numbers are concerned, that the average has recovered to an early August average as far as flight numbers are concerned. So hopefully the passenger numbers will recover in due course as well, because that was just a huge hit for the month of August as a lot of places went into lockdowns and flights were reduced and mobility severely decreased. Definitely keeping an eye on that one. Looking at some of the other numbers that we've seen come out in the past week or so, in Europe, a lot of the low-cost carriers are almost back to where they were in 2019, down things like 8 or 7 or 10%, depending on which kind of carrier you're looking at and which benchmark you're using. So, things recovering here and there. But as we've talked about for the past, 18 months, the recovery is uneven. It's going to take longer in some places. It's going to be shorter in some places. And I don't think we as yet, because of the latest kind of curveball from the Delta variant, have a handle on which way those are going to go and where it's going to come from. So we continue to watch and hope for the best. We've got, let's see, a couple more things. Breeze Airways is up their A220 order. So there you go, Jason. Good for you.
Fantastic. I don't know why it's good for me, but
you get to fly. They don't fly anywhere near me.
They don't fly anywhere near me.
I mean, you kind of live closer to the East Coast than I do.
Yeah, but the closest city they fly to is Hartford, like north of Hartford. It's like a 3-hour train ride each way. It's you could fly to Bradley quicker than I could take a train to get to Bradley. I don't even think that's a joke. But apparently they had actually ordered these 20 A220s quite a while ago, and they were
right.
undisclosed customer, and now it is disclosed, and they have bumped their total orders up to 80, all of the 300 variant, I believe. So that's a lot of A220s.
I'm going to start an airline called Undisclosed Customer Airlines.
And so you could just claim all of the orders.
Exactly.
Is it like the person that tried to change their license plate to null so that when they tried to do
when they went through was it congestion pricing or the toll?
Exactly. When the system screwed up, it couldn't figure out who it was, and they didn't get a ticket. So you just want to kind of like do that and just take every undisclosed customer's airplanes.
Exactly.
Oh, perfect.
I'm sure what could possibly go wrong.
Yep. That's
it's
definitely
like
a thing that would work.
Yeah, it's like when oil traders screw up and then have to actually take delivery.
I love those stories.
So last but not least, last episode we had 2 episodes ago, we had Gavin Werbeloff on to talk about whatever Eastern Airlines was up to, and we're still not really sure what they're up to, but we'll figure it out eventually. Now comes a story of a new freighter conversion group that is actually doing freighter conversions on 777s. These are going to be full freight, door, floor, put pallets, put ULDs in it, have fun, knock yourself out.
Make them real.
Converted 777-200 LRs and converted 777-300 ERs.
That'll be fun.
That'll be interesting. And they are called
Mammoth
freighters.
Mammoth.
So if you convert a 777-200 LR, it'll be a 777-200 LRMF. So yeah, that'll be cool.
We know those 200 LRs are actually the prior Delta 200 LRs that have been sitting around doing nothing since they, for some reason, retired them last year. They've painted them in Mammoth livery, but it is very clear that these are the ex-Delta 777-200 LRs, which will become freighters. Who knew?
They live on. As well they should. They're good airplanes, Brad.
But a 777-300 ER true freighter, that's going to be a sight to see. Yeah. They say it carries 14% more volume than a 747-400F, 81% more than a 767-300 BCF, and 43% more than an MD-11 freighter. So that's a lot of volume.
Yeah, so they'll be, I guess, it'll be the second conversion house for the 777-300 ER, coming after the GCAS Big Twin collaboration with IAI.
So we finally have airplanes with interesting names again. I didn't see it coming from the freighter side, but between Big Twin and Mammoth, we've got some interesting aircraft names once again.
I like it. I like it a lot. I'm going to go think about packing. Or threaten to think about packing, because my flight's not for a couple of days. But you should go start packing because you leave tomorrow.
I am doing laundry as we speak.
Excellent. Jason, I will see you in a couple of days. Everyone else, we will talk to you next week. Jason's going to have the week off because we'll have a full episode on the Airbus Summit with hopefully some great content. And then we'll meet back here for a normal episode the following week to recap everything. But we'll probably record a segment or two for while we're out in Los Angeles. We'll just have to figure out how we're going to get those out. So we can figure that out in a little bit.
Maybe we'll get a special episode out, a special short.
Maybe we'll get a special episode. A short. I like that.
A short, AvTalk just shorts. Like YouTube's doing. AvTalk Shorts. It'll be 5% of the content for 100% of the price.
Which is free. Free.
If anyone's paying for this podcast, please stop doing that. You shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, we come to you. We come to your ears free of charge. And on that note, episode 129 in the books, because I am Ian Petchnick here as always with
Jason Rabinowitz. Thanks for listening.